Jeff. Hey, friends, we know that we have folks who are still in line going to be coming through. Quite a few, actually. I think by looking at the line, we'll probably need to pull out some more tables. But one of the things that we want to do, we're going to go ahead and get started because Bishop Sines has to be on the road by 1 o'clock. He needs to be out the door. He's going to take a to-go plate, so we'll have some who can help him with his to-go food. I don't know, some of this stuff really is hard to eat on the road, Bishop, but he's skilled at eating on the road. So, but let's have a prayer, and then we're going to invite Bishop Sines. We're telling people in line that if they want to step into the room to hear Bishop Sines' remarks on the General Conference and strategic priorities of our newly forming annual conference, that he's going to be sharing that. But let's just pause for a moment for a prayer, please. Oh God, your grace is what brings us here. Your grace is what unites us. Your grace is what calls us forth. So bless this meal, and may we be nourished by not just the meal, but the fellowship and the sharing of all that is Wellspring. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. And Bishop, we're just going to let you have the mic.
All right. Thank you again, Jeff. You keep on eating. And Jeff asked me just to share with you some highlights about my sense of General Conference for this past postponed 2020 General Conference, which took place in 2024. I still get it confused. But let me just wind back a little bit to 2019 at the General Conference in St. Louis. So, I was elected in 2016. Well, maybe you didn't know that, but I was elected in 2016. And so my first General Conference as a bishop was 2019. And the bishops brought forth a proposal for the One Church Plan at the 2019 General Conference. And it was defeated by a margin of 53 to 47, I believe, something like that. A very narrow margin of defeat. And when the bishops got back to our meeting room, I don't know how to describe the sense that was in the room because we saw immediately the impact of the vote on our leadership, on our delegation, and on the people who were guests at the General Conference. And somebody said, every time I go to General Conference, it's like a little piece of me dies. I leave a little part of myself back at General Conference with all of the frustration over trying to legislate everything in our church and the fighting and the parliamentarian maneuvering that goes on to try to obstruct decisions, legislation, petitions, you name it. Everything that a parliamentarian can face. It's kind of like the ultimate presider's chair experience. I preside at the annual conference, but presiding at the General Conference is a very different situation because people have very strong agendas, and they're always trying to stump the bishop in the chair and have all kinds of, and these people are very skilled. But nevertheless, the decision was made to go with a traditional plan, which was very austere and very harsh in many ways. And they tried to really tie the hands of the bishop and force an outcome. Well, the church didn't take well to that. So the day after General Conference, we were in the room, and so many of the bishops they were silent. They couldn't speak because they said, oh my God, I've got to go back to my annual conference, and I've got to provide pastoral care to so many people that are utterly disappointed. Because I think overall, many of the delegates just wanted a church that everybody could have the freedom and the space to be themselves without having to hide. And so we prayed, we cried, we talked about, well, maybe next General Conference in 2020. And then 2020 was ahead of us, and then it got postponed, and then 2021 got postponed, then 22 got postponed. Then we went through the mass disaffiliation, and the Central Texas Conference got hit really hard. And all this time, the delegates that were the 2019 General Conference were the continuing delegates for the 2020 General Conference that was postponed. I don't think we never switched out, right? The same ones that got elected in 2016 went all the way to 2024. They served 8 years. So they were ready for a change. Well, actually, there were a new set in 2020 that got elected for the 2020 General Conference, 2019. Yeah. So after 2019, the delegations from all of the jurisdictions just said, "This no more. We're going to provide leadership." And so at 2024, well, this past one, the spirit in the room was very different. I could tell by the items coming out of the legislative committees on consent calendar, like the removal of restrictive language came out and went on the consent calendar. That means that if an item gets out of the legislative committee with less than 10 votes against, it goes on the consent calendar, and the plenary figures out like, well, there's not any opposition to this, let's just vote on it. Now, some people can pull that legislation out and start debating on the floor, but nobody did that. The regionalization went on consent calendar, the removal of restrictive language went on consent calendar, and the revised social principles went on consent calendar. So the first week, as the teams looked at the legislative petitions, there were over 1,000. Many of them were full throttle support out of the legislative committee. So when we met the second week, most of them showed up on the consent calendar. On the second day, Kelly Carpenter from the North Texas Conference moved that we vote on the consent calendar before lunch. And when that vote was taken, Bishop Burgos next to me from the New England Annual Conference said, "Well, we just passed regionalization." And I said, "What?" He said, "We just passed regionalization." And it just so happened, and with one quick vote, 90% of the people voted for it. Regionalization means that we're going to have constitutional amendments to allow for the United States to be its own central conference, as opposed to a conference with several other conferences tied into it. We're decolonizing the United Methodist Church and giving more autonomy to our African and Filipino and European conferences. And so that passed. And then the fourth day, the language for the petitions to remove the restricted language from the discipline in terms of funding and the finance paragraphs of the 600s, in terms of marriage, in terms of ordination, they were all on consent calendar. And the question was, is someone going to stand and submit 20 votes, right? Because that's all. There were 800 people in the room, and all it took was 20 votes to pull an item off of consent calendar. So nobody did. And so it all went on the consent calendar, and on Thursday it just got voted and moved across, and the language was removed. It was kind of strange in that it happened, and I think it caught everybody by surprise, and the church changed its stance on full participation of the LGBTQ plus community and the life and ministry of the church. And then shortly after that, the last issue to pass was the revised social principles. So in a matter of a few days, the whole church raised its voice and said, "This is the church that we want to be. We want to let every area determine for itself its own policies. But here in the U.S., we want to have a U.S.-centric church where we can have ministry that's more contextual of the communities in which we serve." And so those major three issues were what the delegates were really working toward, was the passing of the regionalization legislation, the removal of restrictive language, and the revised social principles. Those three went by. Now, when we meet again in 2025 as an annual conference, we'll be voting on the constitutional amendments, and if that passes, then basically we'll move towards regionalization, which will give the U.S. more autonomy to determine its policies. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the Book of Discipline has legal matters in there that are only germane to the U.S. but don't apply to other conferences. So the other conferences have always said, when we go to a general conference, we spend most of the time talking about U.S.-centric issues that don't apply to us, so we're just overhearing you all have a discussion with yourselves. What this would do is it would give the U.S. opportunity to deal with U.S.-centric matters, and then let everybody else spend time on mission and ministry that deals with their areas. And so that happened. We have a new judicial council, and we're in full communion with the Episcopal Church, for example, which means that one of our pastors can do communion there, and one of the Episcopal priests can do communion in our churches. We passed the smallest budget in the history of the United Methodist Church. It was $604 million at 2016. It's now $375 million. So that's a 40% reduction. The deacons now, is Jessica a deacon? Yeah, the deacons now have sacramental authority. So, which means that Jessica can now officiate a communion, right, without the bishop's permission or so, but she can do that now as an inherent right for the deacon. So that has changed. And so when we got back to the room after General Conference, compare and contrast to 2019 to 2024, there was excitement in the room, but there was also concern, because the bishops were saying, oh my, we have a lot of work to do. We've got to go speak to our more conservative churches, our more traditional pastors, and message to them that they are wanted and they're needed and part of the United Methodist Church. So all of the bishops were working on their statements to go back to their respective conferences to let the centrist and the more traditional churches know, if we're an inclusive church, that includes you too. And so while there was a lot of joy, there was also a lot of work to be done. I'm very proud of our Central Texas Conference, because our district superintendents have been working with our churches. You know, we had a goal of zero decline. That means that after General Conference, we're not going to lose any more churches. And so I've been really intentional about signaling to everybody, your voice and your ministry are part of the whole of our witness as United Methodists, and we need you to remain. Now, so I'm very proud that to date, we don't have any churches signed up to disaffiliate. Disaffiliate has been extremely painful and hard. I can speak from experience that it came to roost in my house, because the church that I grew up in disaffiliated. And so that was extremely hurtful, especially when my brother, right, who is a member of that church, never even had a conversation with me about what was going on in the life of the church. And so they just took it upon themselves to disaffiliate. So it's come close to my family also. I also have two sons who are in ministry. One is going to be serving at Genesis in Fort Worth this July, but the other one and his church disaffiliated. So this has been a traumatizing season for all of us in many ways. And you know, when we get together for Thanksgiving or for Christmas, there's certain things we don't talk about. And maybe one day we will. But one of the things that we had to, I think, say clearly is what is our relationship with the GMC. Is this being recorded? Yeah, no, yes. What is our relationship with the GMC moving forward? And here's the truth. This is the honest truth. The GMC decided to sever their ties with the United Methodist Church. All right? They are not endorsed by any official United Methodist body. We have what we call the World Methodist Council, which is made up of 80 Wesleyan denominations throughout the world, and 130 countries and 80 million Methodists. I'm not saying United, but just Methodists. The GMC is not a part of the World Methodist Council. That's going to take a recommendation by the Council of Bishops to say, you know, we have reconciled and we are ready to unite in ministry again. That day is not here. It might take decades until that day happens. But, you know, right after General Conference, they continue to disparage the United Methodist Church and our ministry and our witness. We've chosen to take the high road because we believe that we don't need to legitimize that kind of rhetoric, but we believe that we have a mission and a ministry in the world that God is calling us to. And I lament the fact that they've decided to go their separate way. but that has been their choice. We've done everything that we can to help people feel included and welcomed, but our brethren decided to go their separate choice. We pray that one day we may be reconciled, but at this point, it's not happening anytime in the very near future. You've got to look at historically, for example, when the Methodist Church split over the issue of slavery, right? Whether or not African Americans could worship at a church. The South took a position, and they created the Methodist Episcopal Church South in 1844, and it wasn't until 1939 that that was finally healed and brought back together again. So it took almost 95 years for the church to bring healing. And I envision that one day that there'll be reconciliation, there'll be a unification again between the two, the United Methodist Church and the GMC. We pray for that day, but in the meantime, we're going to be focused on our mission and ministry. Now that said, one of the things that I was really clear about was that General Conference is going to happen, and we have a tendency as United Methodists to look up to heaven to see what the General Conference is going to do. But what I appreciate about Wellsprings is that you've been about your mission and ministry, regardless of what General Conference is going to do. But I wanted to move into this season with a very clear understanding of what we're going to be focused on in our mission field. We have the fastest growing mission field in the country, right? And the fastest diversifying mission field in the country. Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Round Rock area, the Georgetown area, this place is exploding with people. And we have a robust opportunity to really reach people with the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so I'm really excited about that. And so what I've been intentional about doing, I met with the district superintendents and I said, we have to be very clear about where we're headed. So we created the vision statement. And it's we are followers of Jesus, seeking the loving, just, and free world God imagines for all people, which is kind of the horizon vision. Our mission is to make disciples, but we don't just want to make disciples, we want to multiply disciples. We want to accelerate our disciple-making mission and ministry. Now that means that we can't make disciples the way that we normally do, right? Long-term, 30, 40, 50 years. We're going to have to figure out a way to connect with people that are looking for belonging, looking for a connection with God and with a community that can support them. And so we're working on what does it mean to multiply Jesus followers, because we have a generation, and with that together as the children, that's why I really appreciate your children's area here during worship. I was fascinated to see the children just worshiping in their own way while worship was happening. Because for me, the center of our missional priority is our children. It used to be that if most people, by 80% of the Christians in today's church, made a profession of faith by the time they're 18, right? Now, if I ever asked you to raise your hand, most of you would say, I knew Christ before I was 18 at a summer camp or at a confirmation class or whatever. Nowadays, that window has shrunk to 12. So we have a shorter window to evangelize the children with the good news of the gospel. So children's ministry is going to be radically important, but not just ministry in the faith formation, but also ministry with our young people. Our young people are really struggling a lot in their lives with depression, with anxiety, with social isolation, and also with just a foreboding about the future of the world. I think one of the next things that we're going to be looking at as United Methodist Church is creation care, because our young people have an existential angst about the future that awaits them as a planet gets hotter, as a migratory pattern start happening, and people start migrating all over the world. They're really concerned about the direction that we're heading. And the thing is that the baby boomers, present company included, pretend like the resources are inexhaustible, and that as long as they're around while we're alive, we're good with it. But our young people are really seeing what's happening in our world. I mean, just look at what's happening in the U.S. with all the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the hailstorms and the flash flooding all over the U.S. in just this month alone. And it's accelerating at a very high rate. And so, I mean, whatever you believe about climate change, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But our young people are very concerned about it, and they're taking action. They're raising their voices on social media and other means to sound the alarm to say, adults, pay attention, because you're the ones that have the ability and the power to change these things and to advocate for a difference in behaviors. And so our children, we need to care for them, not just those that are in our churches, but also those that are hurting in our world. We're going to maximize healing and care. Again, this is part of the whole system, in that, one of the things that attracted people to Jesus was that he healed people. People would come from all the villages to come to hear him preach, but also to be healed by him. So that we're going to reclaim the ministry of healing and care in our churches. I know that you have a great healing system here. I saw the Stephen Ministries poster there and things like that. But I'm elevating healing and care to a priority in our conference, and because we want to reclaim the ministry of healing, mental healing, emotional healing, relational healing, spiritual healing, and social healing, so that people can experience wholeness in their life, the plenitude of Christ. And then we want to pursue and embrace diversity. And Wellspring is way out ahead of so many churches. That's what I said, you're a teaching church, because you've already laid your stake in the ground that you're a church that welcomes all, accepts all, loves all, and all means all. And so you're really working on it intentionally, and you're pursuing it, right? A lot of our churches are not yet woken up to that. Fast, right? So I'm looking for a church that mirrors our demographic. The thing is that and so for that, we're getting a person that can help us grow in our cultural humility and competency, so that we can understand different people groups. For example, I was a tailor a few months ago, and Taylor's building a plant with 3,000 people. Many of them from South Korea, and I asked the pastor, I said, what plans do you have to reach the South Korean community that's moving into your neighborhood? So, well, we haven't really thought about it. I said, and why not? How are you getting oriented on South Korean culture? How are you getting oriented on South Korean spirituality? How are you getting to understand the hopes and dreams of these communities that live in your neighborhood? They're right there. If we're going to be a loving, just, and free world and a diverse church, then the onus is on us to understand who our neighbor is, not on our neighbor to become like us. And so we have to enter into their world as learners, so that we can then be able to share the gospel with them in a way that resonates with who they are. And so this is happening all around us. And we're going to wake up. And here's another thing. Even as our churches open up space for the LGBT community, this person will be charged with equipping our churches, our boards of ordained ministry, our committees, our districts, with the tools that they need to understand and to be welcoming churches for all God's children. And so we have a lot of work to do. Hospital systems, for example, I serve on the board for Methodist Health Systems, and they're always intentionally training the nurses on how do you deal with an African American, how do you deal with an Hispanic, how do you deal with a Japanese American, how do you deal with somebody from Mexico that comes in for treatment. They all have different understandings of conventional medicine and different beliefs and anxieties about it. And if you don't understand where they're coming from, then you're really not able to minister to the whole person. So they constantly have to be educated on the people that they serve, so that they can be effective healers. And so we're going to work on that moving forward. And then lastly, we're going to tell our story. I'm just so sick and tired of being disparaged. It broke my heart to have Methodists that have been lifelong Methodists to say, well, what's so good about being United Methodist? Let's have a seminar so we can learn. So you've been in church for 60 years. I tell you what you can do. Go to the internet and look up, Google United Methodism, and you'll see the hospitals, the schools, the children's ministries, our international missions, the way we send missionaries into the world, the way we've conquered malaria in Africa. Just look at our trajectory. And if you don't have enough information, right, let me help you buy a computer, because it's all there. But the inability for people to really appreciate and what people have walked away from was really, for me, that was the most disheartening. Right, that we've had people in our pews who really do not understand what it means to be Wesleyan and what it means to be a United Methodist witness in the world. And Wesley said, though we not think alike, may we not all love alike, right? And so what does that mean, to be able to hold in tension, right, things that we agree with and disagree with, but be able to focus on what is necessary for salvation, that Jesus Christ came, lived, died for our sins, and has promised us abundant life. And we can agree on that. Everything else, let us consider it opinion, but not necessary for salvation. Anyway, I get off on a tangent. But But one of the, and I told my communicators, I said, look, we have a tendency to talk to ourselves about how good we are. We need to turn our message outward to a world that has formed opinions about us based on false narratives and disparaging comments, and they've formed their idea. We're going to tell our story to the public. So anytime that I wrote an op-ed for the Dallas Morning News that came out shortly after General Conference, but my communications director, I said, we're going to have Methodist night at the ballpark in Arlington at Globe Life Field, and we're going to invite the Methodists, and the Methodists are going to show up there in mass because we're going to be proud and we're going to be loud, and I'm going to throw out the first pitch. So pray for me. I hope I don't make the top 10 bloopers on ESPN. But I'm going to have to channel my 17-year-old high school baseball playing days. Somehow stuff doesn't work the way it used to. But anyway, look, we're really excited. And the idea was, look, if we're going to multiply Jesus followers, if we're going to champion children and youth, if we're going to maximize care and healing, if we're going to pursue and embrace diversity and tell our story, then General Conference can do what General Conference is going to do. We're going to do this. The good news is the General Conference did what it did, so now we can do this with more energy and more purpose. So again, I just want to thank you for who you are, for your witness, for raising your voice, for being a church that welcomes all, accepts all, and loves all the way God has loved you. And so keep up the good work, okay? You matter. You matter to Sun City. You matter to all this area. You matter to the Central Texas Conference, and you matter to the Horizon Texas Conference, and you matter to the United Methodist Church, but more than anything else, you matter to Christ. And so thank you for what you do, for all you are. I'm just grateful for Jeff's leadership. It's exhausting, Jeff, to be the church that you are. Because you know what? You don't have to do anything. You can just have worship services and come and sing good songs and do a little bit of happy clappy and everybody can go home. But no, instead you go get into all kinds of trouble, right? Right? You just can't, and then you bring your friends with you too from the church. Well, you know what? Just stay connected to Christ. This work is exhausting if you're not rooted in Christ. If you're not rooted in a life of prayer, if you're not rooted in spiritual disciplines, you cannot sustain the type of energy that it takes to do this work well unless you're deeply grounded and rooted in Christ. Above all else, do that. In the morning or whenever you do, take care of your spiritual life. I get up every morning at 5 and I get coffee and I make some green tea. I love that stuff. Then I do my devotional. We have notes for a new day. And have you done a devotional yet? 2. Okay, and so I read that, and normally I send the devotee a note, and I pray for the clergy there. And then I go exercise, right? Because part of the stamina that this work takes is we got to be as physically fit as we can. And then by 6:30, I'm ready to start reading my emails and working. So by 12 o'clock, I've already put in an 8-hour day. But that, you know what? That's what it takes. But I couldn't do it unless we're deeply rooted in Christ. So God bless you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for using your voice unashamedly and boldly. Even when you think people don't hear it, they're hearing it. They're hearing it. And so trust that when you speak, others are listening, and they might never tell you thank you for what you said, but it might open up a space in their mind to be more loving, to be more gracious, to be more kind, to be more compassionate, to be more Christ-like. So never underestimate what the Holy Spirit can do when you raise your voice to speak on God's behalf for those that are not in the room. Okay? God bless you. Keep up the good work. I'll see some of you at annual conference here in Round Rock, okay? And God bless you in all you do.
So friends, thank you and Bishop, thank you so much. The bishop asked me after the sermon how he did. I said that he was already practicing throwing strikes. So he's already got it. And what we're going to do is, and it's not long, but we do have this thing that we call Meet at the Well. And I know there may be some who may have stopped getting food. It doesn't look like it. It looks like everybody maybe made it through. But what we're going to do is we're going to walk quickly through a few things to let you know what's going on at Wellspring, for you to hear some of the things. We promise not to take more of your afternoon than necessary, but we do want to share with you some of the things. And we're going to start. We don't always do this, but we've tried to do it at least once a year, but we don't always do it at the exact same way. But I've asked our lay leader and chair of our board, Tom Karstarfen, to come and introduce our board members. So board members in the room, be ready to stand up for a minute.
Yes, stand up and then run for the exit. Okay, as Jeff said, I'm the board chair for Wellspring United Methodist Church, and I've had the distinct privilege of working with a couple of groups of people that have literally turned this church and this congregation around 180 degrees, and I cannot be more proud to be associated with them. So I'm going to call out some board member names. Please stand up, wave your hand if you have to, and we'll kind of go from there. Bob Miles, where are you at? Not here? Oh, okay. Mark Broderick. Marilyn Wiles. There she is back in the corner. Yay. Nancy Foster. There she is right there. Andy Hauser. Did Andy make it today? No, he did not. Okay. Louis Cogdell. Board member and drummer extraordinaire. Marge Sipple, the vice chair. Michelle Sloan. There she is. Cheryl Heltney, right back there. Then Mary Brown. Doesn't look like it, huh? Okay. Jeremy Ferguson. I know you're here, big guy. Oh, he had to leave? Okay. Patty Lee. Same song? Was here? Okay. Julie Fleischman. Okay. And Stephanie Schutz. There she is. Thank you very much.
They are. They're doing mission work. The ones that are not here, and if some, yeah, actually, I think a couple are in the kitchen, so they're working hard. So many of you know that we had the sale of land to the YMCA, and so one of the things that has been really good for us is that Frank Westfall has been, he started working on this when he was on the board, and even though he came off the board, he had been so passionately focused on the deal with the YMCA that the board simply authorized him as our point of contact for the church. So if there is any person knows anything more about the YMCA land deal and the development, it is Frank Westfall. He keeps me updated, but that man knows it. He's going to come and give you a very brief update on where we are in the development of the YMCA.
All right. Try to keep it quick. Obviously, a project of this magnitude, there's a lot of things happening that you don't see. Unfortunately, we're probably a long way away from seeing a lot of dirt being moved, but there is a lot of work taking place behind the scenes. You know, you can't involve the city without a lot of work. And so the first thing that I think is important everybody keep in mind, and I suspect most people already know it, but it's important to remind everybody, we are being annexed into the city. The YMCA property and us are going to be part of the city. Well, that's a process. Part of that then also requires rezoning. And that means you got to go through the zoning process with the city. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen. And along those lines, we felt it was important to inform all of our neighbors. The city requires it, and they'll be sending official notices out, but we decided the best thing to do is to be open and as forthcoming as we can with all of our neighbors as to what's going on. So we held a big meeting here last week with all of our neighbors, everybody all the way around that's within 300 feet of our properties, and we had a huge attendance. We had a lot of interest, we have a lot of support for the YMCA, and obviously a lot of concerns about what that means to them. The biggest concern probably is, as you would imagine out here, traffic, okay? Not a lot we can do about traffic, but we can do our best to make sure it impacts them as little as possible. The other thing was probably barriers. That was the other thing that came up significantly, and rightfully so. There's concerns that there'll be cut-throughs made to the YMCA outside of Williams, and that's not going to happen. We talked about fencing, we talked about the right kind of trees and shrubs to make a barrier around the perimeter. All good feedback we got, all legitimate concerns, and an openness to work together as a partnership. So we're starting that process. That happened. When we start working time-wise, the next steps will probably include, we know for sure that the sewer system, the city sewer system, will be one of the first things to take place, that we will see an actual impact on. They need to get us off of our septic system and onto the city sewer system before they can move a lot of dirt, okay? So kind of good for us. We're going to get that out of the way quickly. Just so you know, the city sewer line stops right now by Randall's. Right now, the city has indicated they're thinking the best plan of action to get the sewer here is to go on the other side of Williams Drive and come under the road between the two buildings and then hook us up and then later hook them up. So that's probably the first thing you're going to start to see happening. At the same time all this is going on, the engineers are working on the plans, and the architects are working on the plans, and that's moving along pretty rapidly. They're narrowing it down, and I suspect before long we'll have some final plans that we can share with all of you. We'll do our best to keep everybody informed as we get deeper into this, but primarily that's kind of the next step for us. We'll show you what it's going to look like. We'll show you where it's going to be. I think you're going to be pleased. It's really coming along quite well. Entrance. The other thing I wanted to mention is you hear a lot of people talking about Williams Drive, the traffic, how are we going to get these entrances to work. The city has pretty much already indicated to us, of course this is a state highway, so now we got the state involved, right? That we're going to need to have a deceleration lane to come into the property, and that probably means you can't have two entrances that close together, if you visualize it. So there will likely be, we're expecting one entrance, one common entrance. It may or may not be where ours is right now. It may be over a little bit. None of that's been finalized. All the engineers, the civil engineers and so forth have to get all that figured out. But we're likely going to have one entrance, one common entrance. You'll come in and you go one way to us, the other way to the Y. And again, I think that will actually end up helping us in the long run. Timing, I know everyone wants to know. It takes time. It's taking a little longer than I think we all had hoped it would be. But I'm expecting, right now they're saying the grand opening probably spring of 2026. It's likely to change as we go, but we'll keep you all informed. I'll be around. If you have any questions, just feel free to, anytime. Jackie and I are usually 9 o'clock worshipers. We're at the door most of the time, so don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions if you want. And then just one little last-minute plug for the YMCA. You heard Bishop Sines talking about the importance of ministry and the importance of youth, our young ones. We have a tremendous opportunity right now, right in front of us. And so we'll put a plug in one more time to sign up and get involved with Camp Brightwell this summer. It's easy, there's opportunities. Jessica can share with you if you have any questions, but there's ways that you can impact the lives of young kids right now and get a jump start on what Bishop Sines was talking about. So, Jeff, back to you, or Jessica, back to Jessica.
Frank, that was the perfect setup because I'm going to talk about how they can be involved with the YMCA. So, as Frank said, this isn't just a transactional sale of land. The YMCA is already here. They're on our property. They're in our building. In about 2 weeks, you're going to literally see that if you show up anytime on a weekday between like 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And so the last few summers, we've experimented with what it looks like to invite the YMCA into what we're doing here, the ministry that we're doing here. But this summer, we're flipping the script. And so we've decided to show up and be present in what they're already doing. And so it turns out that's what Jesus did. He showed up in the world where things were already happening, and he showed up as the embodiment of love in the world. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to show up in an incarnational way, trying to be in relationship with kids and with counselors and with families. And so as Jesus did that, that was an invitation. And so this is our invitation as well. So we're having lunch with campers on Wednesdays this summer. We're leading opening ceremonies on Wednesdays this summer, and there are some other opportunities to serve. If you have some kind of a special skill or something that you would love to share with campers, they would love to have you. So talk to me about that. So we're going to be doing that, and this is a precursor to what I imagine our ministry partnership will look like with them year-round, because they'll be right next door year-round. And so what will it look like for us to show up and be a ministry of presence within the YMCA itself and be in relationship with people on an ongoing basis? So there's still discernment around exactly what that looks like once the building opens, but this is just, I don't know, practice, experimentation, if you will, us following where God is leading us in that regard. We're also still going to be partnering with them on community events. If you showed up at Trunk or Treat last fall, you saw one possibility of what that looks like. We've been talking already about what we might do next spring. As they open their building, that'll give us more chance to do more and more of those things as our potential facilities and other things change. So we're still kind of asking the question of what does it look like for key aspects of our ministry to occur not inside this building. Yeah, we dedicated it, that's important, and all those things. And that's also so that we can leave the building and go and do ministry elsewhere. And so what does it look like for that to happen in the YMCA? So hang on, got my papers all messed up here. So that's more about the YMCA. And now it's actually back to Jeff to talk about our purpose statement.
So, as you've heard about the various things that have been happening concerning the why, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we are focused on our purpose and how we are fulfilling that purpose. So we're going to talk a little bit about the how we are aligning and working to align with the strategic priorities that the bishop mentioned. But before, I want to remind us that after a lengthy discernment process, that on March 5th, 2023, we adopted it was unveiled at our Meet at the Well event that day. That was our new purpose statement. And one of the things that happened was that's where we expanded our motto. our motto had been, all are welcome, all are accepted. That was really just our motto from the beginning. And I, along with others, started adding all means all. But then out of our discernment process, we decided to stick right there, right before all means all are loved. And so that's how we moved, we've expanded. And so our purpose statement is, we are called by God to be disciples of Jesus Christ who love everyone by being in relationship with God, one another, in the community through mission and service, actively pursuing diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation with an emphasis on being a welcoming church home for all, engaging people of all ages in dynamic, intergenerational ministries that nurture spiritual growth. Now, that's all spelled out. What you may not know is that at the close of worship today, you sang a song that is penned by our own Andy David that is our purpose statement. So we love all God's creation. When we're singing that song, that's based on our purpose statement, and we thank Andy for bringing this purpose statement to life for us in that way. But it's our job then to see how we can bring it further alive. And we do that in so many different ways. We do that, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about money. We can't talk about mission and ministry without it impacting how we talk about money. About 3 weeks ago, I think it was, Mark came and shared with us about the needs of the church. We had an email that had gone out explaining that we had already experienced a little bit of tightness through the spring, and that we were asking for people to consider giving and helping us get back up, because we know that summer comes, and when summer comes that we have people who travel, and very often and there are a lot of people who worship with us who are not members here, who are not pledging members, who are and maybe here today, and we certainly welcome you and see you, and that is something that there are people who, though, give when they're here, but they don't give when they're not here, and we understand that, and we know that that's a part of the ebb and flow of church finance. However, I want to say, first of all, thank you. You stepped up, and so we immediately had something that moved us up and has kept us from having quite as deep of deficit in budget. The other thing I want to share with you, though, is that we celebrated up here today, tearing up that note, and that we don't have mortgage payments. The budget that we are talking about that's already tight, it doesn't have a mortgage payment in it. We ended the mortgage payments at the end of the year. Now, that does free us up for a little bit more robust budget in terms of our mission and ministry. We also, though, have to pay attention to systems in the building. We actually, the air conditioners that run this building are as old as this building, and this building was built in 2002. So that's something that we have to pay attention to. We have to pay attention to the fact that we have opportunities that sometimes come right in front of us that we should mobilize and we need to be able to invest in, that are mission and ministry, whether we're talking about ministry in the community through justice and mercy ministries, because sometimes we find some surprising ways that we can connect. And then we find other ways that we are able to really plan out. So we want to be able to have that robust budget and be able to do that. So thank you for doing that, for being the church that makes these things happen in ministry. And so I don't want this to be a thing that is hard for us. I want it to be something that we celebrate, that we understand that with growing ministry are growing opportunities. And so I want to just celebrate all that we've done here. And a big part of that comes in how we are going to talk about strategic priorities. And so we talk about what our mission has been, but I want to celebrate some things with you that we have, that we're going through all of our strategic priorities. I'm going to let Jessica start. And you remember the bishop said the strategic priorities are multiply Jesus followers, champion children and youth. Jessica's got those two. Pursue and embrace diversity. I'm going to share a little bit with you, and then maximize care and healing and telling our story. I'm going to bring those back around. So stick with us for just a minute as we go through these quickly.
Y'all might like that I talk fast now that we've been here for all this time. So, Multiply Jesus followers, as Jeff and I looked at our new members and professions of faith in 2023 and thus far in 2024, we've had 12 adult professions of faith and a confirmation class of 5 youth. That's like in less than 18 months. We've had that much growth in terms of, yeah. And then I also just want to remind you that all of our classes, our small groups, our short-term studies, even, did y'all know we have an online small group that is made up of, a few of you are in the room today, but a lot of the people in our online small group can't be here in the building, and so they have a connection with each other. All of those groups, the ones that we have here and the ones that we have online, are aimed at helping people grow, helping them live out their faith and their discipleship in their daily lives wherever they are, to show up as the embodiment of Christ in the world. I think I said that earlier too. Apparently that's important to me, that we show up as the embodiment of Christ in the world. And so that's an invitation. That's also how we multiply Jesus followers. And so that's a big part of what we're aiming to do, and we hope that you will just come alongside us and join in all of that and be a part of it. And then championing children and youth, the bishop actually told you what I was going to tell you before, which is great. So it's important to us that we include children and youth fully in our community. He talked about the playground, and I was going to celebrate the playground and that we've had it for 6 months. And I love the way children are learning and growing in that space, which may look like a playground, but we called it a playground because we know they learn through play. And it's amazing how many of those kids after worship can tell me what the sermon was about, even though it looked like they were just playing with blocks the whole time or whatever it is that they're doing. So I celebrate all of you for being supportive of that, and for including children fully in our community. Did y'all know that the youth who are in here right now have a bingo card for this meeting? That's a part of how we're including youth fully in our community, because we want them to listen to what we're saying, because they're a part of our congregation. So anyways, our engagement with the YMCA, as I talked about before, our engagement with Project Transformation, the ways that we are connected with the Georgetown Project and other things in our community are other ways of how we're championing children and youth, not just here, but also beyond the walls of the church. And so it was exciting to Jeff and I to look at the strategic priorities and go, oh, hey, look, we are doing so many of those things already, and we can just keep running and running faster in that direction. So very exciting. Jeff, you're up. I know, he's trying to eat lunch.
So one of the things as we talk about the ways that we are working within the community, and making sure I'm in the right place in my notes, that as we pursue and embrace diversity, it's very obvious what we've been doing as a church, as a reconciling church. That part is very important. We are doing what the bishop said, and that is that we are beginning to really lean into the fact that we need to know who our neighbors are. And so we have tools that we've used for demographic studies to be able to see who the neighbors are who are moving in the community, to see where our opportunities lie, and to begin to learn about the people that are coming here. And so those are incredibly important. And one of the things that we are doing, and this sort of moves between these, but as we talk about pursuing and embracing diversity, we cannot do that without talking about justice ministries. And so we speak openly about justice issues as they are social justice, racial justice, as we talk about the various activities that we have. And so Jessica's going to share just a little bit about how that ties into what we are calling maximizing care and healing. So there's a lot of overlap in these. So Jessica, you share that part.
Yeah, so some of you might know this, but some of you might not. We formed a Mercy and Justice team at the beginning of this year, and I see several of the team members in here. If y'all want to raise your hands, that would be amazing. Yeah, see, I bet most of them were here. Yay. So this team's focused on leading Wellspring's engagement in the community through our Mercy and our Justice ministries. It's already happening. Like, this is not something we weren't doing until we had the team. It's more that this team is helping us do this in an intentional and coordinated way, and helping us to do that in a way that is empowering, that our mission is empowering, that we're engaging in social justice in Georgetown and beyond Georgetown. And you heard that it's a key part of our purpose. It's a key part of who we are. And so this team's task is to lead us forward in this work, to do the work of discernment and the work of leadership in helping us to do that work well. And we're doing it well already, even better. That's what I'm trying to say. So within the last year, some things that have started happening. We have engaged with the Georgetown PFLAG group, and that's, I think, an ongoing connection that we're going to be seeing more and more of, as well as Georgetown Pride. And we've continued our engagement with local organizations like the Caring Place, like Helping Hands, and that's just a few. I mean, there's actually an actually existing really long list. But this team is doing great work. There's some other really exciting things coming up I'm looking forward to, so just stay tuned for more on that. And right now, if you're thinking, well, what's the one thing that I could do right now that I can engage with that relates to Mercy and Justice Ministries? This summer, Project Transformation is the thing I'm going to highlight for you. It begins June 6th. It's really important. So if you know how to read, and if you like kids, then you can be a reading buddy with kids through Project Transformation. So take a look at that. There's info in the e-news right now. You can talk to me anytime, or I know this is not only for women. United Women in Faith is going to learn more about this too at their meeting in a couple weeks. That's a teaser because you haven't had that announcement, but it's coming. Anyways, so yes, do that.
All right.
Jack wins.
Jack wins. All right. Yeah, we were prepared that there would be bingo yelled out at some point during the middle of this. So, the other thing that I really want to talk about as we talk about care and healing and looking for a new day is that we have two people who are with us today who have worshiped with us from Gatesville. And so Tom and Marianne, would y'all stand? Just let us greet you. Tom and Marianne Lieb. So the bishop was very excited to know that that this church has taken an intentional effort to support the people in Gatesville as they are, and it's United Methodist who are the remnant of a church that disaffiliated. So they no longer have a church building. They are just, and the group is growing a little bit from what I understand, right? So we're talking about 25 to 30, what's our number? 18. Okay, so 18. That's consistent, isn't it? But we're watching this group and helping this group. Many of our clergy have agreed. So some of the clergy that you saw up here bringing communion are clergy who have committed to go and once a month be with them to offer communion to the people in Gatesville. So thank you. Yeah, something we celebrate. And so that is a huge thing for us because we are charged with healing. And our healing presence is needed in this United Methodist Church. And so that's what we're about, of doing exactly what the bishop was calling us to do something outside of ourselves and to be connected with other United Methodists who are struggling in a season of disaffiliation. So, and he's right. We're saying no more diminishing of our denomination in the Central Texas Conference. We are working to grow, and that is a key part of our growth of how we're going to do this. So, and then as we get to that last thing, tell our story. Tell our story. There's some things that I want you to know that are really critically important to how we tell our story. First of all, we talk about worship planning. I drop this hint every so often in sermons to make sure that people do understand that the sermons that if it's just a terrible sermon, I did it all by myself. If it's a sermon that has any weight and merit to it, it is a team that stands with me to do the sermon. And so every week, Tuesday from 9:30 to 11:30, we have a group that includes Jessica and Neil Baumwart, who is retired clergy, Andy and Sue Davidson, Frank Jacks, and me. That's right. Is that all of us that I'm thinking of? That meet, and what we do is we do Bible study together, and we nudge each other, and we challenge each other, and more than once, and we do it by Zoom and hybrid. So sometimes there are a couple of people here in the building, and others are on Zoom. But there's that look that whenever I have said something that is just crazy outlandish, that I can look up and I see 2 or 3 faces looking at me going, Are you sure you want to say that out loud? And they help me grow. And so we tell our story as a team. You have witnessed, I hope, if you have any part of social media, that you are witnessing our growth in social media presence. We don't do quite as many pictures, so Instagram is sort of our growing edge right now. But we've got Facebook down pretty well. If you're on Twitter, you want to follow Frank Jacks on Twitter, because Frank's it's X now. I know I still can't bring myself to say it, but Frank is our guy on X. And so, what's your handle, Frank? Frank Jacks Jr. Just go look for Frank Jacks Jr. All one string, you'll find him. And so, then. The way we are doing justice ministries in the community, it's telling our story. It's the fact that when we show up at the last Move the Monument event, Jessica offered a prayer, and our presence there was felt. For those who went, you know that our presence was critically important. And when we show up when we've shown up at the very first Georgetown Pride event, that our presence was known. And people know that we are here. And when we do that, we are telling our story. And so that's critically important, how we tell our story in justice ministries. And then finally, neighbor to neighbor. I want to tell you that some of our greatest evangelists have been people, like the Westfalls, who have brought, how many people from your street have been part of our church? Yeah, a bunch. Yeah. 6 couples, is that what you said? Yeah. They just talk. You know Frank. Frank's good at that. There is nobody that he meets that is not immediately his friend. And we tell stories to our neighbors. And that is bringing more and more people here. So we are doing some incredible work. And so as I close, this is the end, just to say, I am so proud to be your pastor. And I think I speak for Jessica, that she's proud also to be your pastor. And we are so blessed by the literally hundreds of ways, thousands of ways, that we are making a difference in this world with every small act. And so our presence that has been a presence online is critically important. I forgot to mention some of our farthest, our streamers are over in the corner. Marilyn and Clara, wave hands over there. Marilyn, you got introduced to. She had been our lay leader last year. She is still on the board this year, and they connect with us from Horseshoe Bay every Sunday, every week. They're on Zoom, they're in meetings. Many of you know them without having actually seen them in person until you see them here. So thank you. Thank you for being the church that is a witness in this world. And the bishop, I think, said it best. Raise your voice. Be known. Be bold in the proclamation of Christ in this world, through this church, through the way you live in this world. And friends, as we've said before and say always, then you will transform the world. So be that church. Thank you very much, and God bless. Last little reminder that tomorrow, if anybody's interested in the General Conference update, the link for registering for that is in the e-news, and so you do need to register for it. You'll get an email with the link. So, thank you.